Hola, Barcelona. That's the extent of Spanish I know. So, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. For those of you in the back, if you move forward, it will be easier to see the demonstration. But your choice. Don't be a stranger. Please come forward. So, my name is Taruna Gandhi. I run product and technical marketing for OpsRamp. And today we are here to talk to you about how you manage your AI deployments. For the folks in the audience, how many of you have AI projects spinning up that you are responsible for? Let's see a show of hands. How's that going? Good? Yeah. Well, the reason we started investing in OpsRamp to manage AI deployments is because it's our thesis that once you get the infrastructure up and running, you'll be spending majority of your time in the operations console looking at how to optimize those deployments, how to assure performance, how to make sure that all those dollars and euros you're spending with NVIDIA are being put to good use. And so that's kind of the basis of this session. I'm going to skip this over. So one of the things that the AI deployments have done for us is it's kind of started this resurgence of the data center. A lot of you folks who have AI deployments, you're doing them on your private cloud, because if you put your large-scale AI deployments on the public cloud, not only is it very expensive, but you have issues with latency and data gravity and sovereignty and security and all of those things. The other thing that we see happening in the market with the AI deployments becoming front and center is convergence of all these operations roles. On top of that, you have the ever big explosion of observable data. So these AI workloads, not only are they data hungry, they're also generating a lot of operational data. If you look at the NVIDIA gear that you're deploying or what you're doing with the applications on top of it, they generate a lot of data. So what do you do with this? How do you make sure that you're using not only your infrastructure as efficiently as possible, but taking advantage of the observable data signals that you're getting to make sure that it is performant and efficient? So this is where we started investing in OpsRamp so that we can help you make sense of this world and go from being reactive to proactive and predictive. Kind of taking a book out of this AI itself to manage it. So think about it as AI managing AI, right? What do you have to do? You have to make sure that you can make sense of all of this information that you're getting. You have to have a system that will constantly learn and relearn. And you also have to have actionable insights coming out of that system that can be either automated fully or partially or under your control. This is where OpsRamp, we started investing in it so that we could observe all of the data that's coming, not just the AI infrastructure data, but looking at your AI infrastructure in context with the rest of your data center and workloads. We're able to deploy some of the similar techniques that you're working on, the foundational models, the transformer-based models, the neural nets, to make sure that we can analyze this data and then provide actionable insights that you can automate. Right? So in terms of what you get with OpsRamp, it's unified observability, AI-powered analytics, and intelligent automation that still keeps you in control. In terms of what it delivers to you, if you put all these things together, this unified observability, we have built not just the integrations on the NVIDIA side, but we have 3,000 plus integrations. These are to make sure that you're looking holistically at your entire environment so that you can take policy-based actions on the data that you're getting. So these integrations are up and down, the stack. They are across your private cloud, third-party infrastructure components, public clouds, multiple runtimes, whether it's VMs or containers or bare metal that you might be running on, as well as multiple application types. Now, we put this all through a machine learning and AI engine that we have built. If you think about monitoring tools, everybody did time series data. And they called it machine learning, but we know it's statistical analysis. You're looking at pattern matching, things that you've seen in the past. But you now also need to take advantage of the AI techniques. The very AI projects that you're planning to deploy use the similar techniques to do things like training the model on observability data. Now, a lot of models that you see out there are based on, like, I can put a picture of my dog on the moon. That's not observability data. So we're building foundational models that take advantage of the metrics, logs, traces, and network flows so that we can make sense of your data center infrastructure. And then we go up the stack, and we look at your application types and give you a full up and down view from app to infrastructure. And then finally, using that data for some of the basic things that you guys have to do in your data center, those same principles apply to your AI deployments. Whether you're doing automation of regular jobs or you're looking at auto remediation of issues. So what you get is something that gives you this command center across your entire environment, across your entire enterprise infrastructure and applications, so that you can simplify your operations management. Again, going back to once the infrastructure is up and running, you got to make sure those GPUs are performant. It's kind of very interesting. In the olden days, when we used to do virtualization, it was like, OK, don't let the load exceed a certain percentage, right? We would put a buffer in there and say, do not go over 60% or 75%. It's the exact opposite when it comes to GPUs. You don't want the load to fall because it's so expensive to deploy them. And then you're also looking at power and cooling, as well as your cost and performance when you're doing this. So we are putting this all together to give you a centralized console that you can manage your entire infrastructure with. All right, so in terms of what OpsRamp can do, it has this whole workflow that goes from discovery to resolution. And it can do it across your virtualized environment. It can do it for containers running on top of VMs. It can do it on containers running on bare metal, and also your AI native workloads. Now, this is very critical because it's the same tool. It cuts down on the learning curve as you go from one type of application to another. It also cuts down and makes sure that you're not building yet another silo. That's what got us into trouble to begin with. So that is our goal, is to make sure you get this holistic picture across the board, no matter what your deployment topology is, no matter what your runtime is, and no matter what your application type is. So with that in mind, we started building these integrations with the NVIDIA infrastructure. So we can support the NVIDIA GPUs. You can see performance. You can see load. You can see utilization. You can see capacity. You can see power consumption. All of those are brought forward in a very consolidated dashboard for you. We also integrated with the NVIDIA InfiniBand and Ethernet fabrics, as well as we integrate with their cluster manager. And this is where we are going to show you in a demo. We'll put it all together and show you what it really looks like in the product. So with that, let me invite Ron over to the stage. Hey, Ron.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you. All right, thank you for that. So as Taruna mentioned, I'm Ron Singler. I lead our solutions architecture team here at HPE OpsRamp. I've been here since April, and I'm loving every minute of it. So she asked who had any AI projects at the beginning. Anybody supporting developers that are developing cloud-native applications in your environment? Perfect. As you know, 90+% of any AI workload or application is developed in a cloud-native architecture, right? They're utilizing Python, utilizing Kubernetes, serverless architectures. So what we did was, let me ask this first. Anybody familiar with Private Cloud AI, or PCAI for short? They announced it this week. Awesome. So if you haven't stopped by their booth, I would definitely check it out. OpsRamp is included as part of that solution set. but it obviously helps streamline you and your AI projects along the way. So within OpsRamp, we have what we call service maps, right? And a service map simply lays out your application or workload. And in this case, we're showing an AI inference job with the services and showing the latency between those services at that layer within the service map. Now we're monitoring and observing all the actions within each layer. We can send you alerts. You see some numbers there next to the CPUs and GPUs annotating how many we're actually monitoring or observing at that layer. But moving down the stack, we're moving into the Kubernetes layer. You can see all of the pods, which service or workload is tied to which container within a pod. Below that, the physical infrastructure showing, again, the CPUs and GPUs, and then moving down the stack into the network and storage environment. Now, the other way that we show that in the solution is through dashboarding, right? And just moving, top to bottom of that full stack. Again, here we have the model requests along with the latency by each model revision, the total request, and then showing any 500 or 400 errors that we may be seeing in the environment. Showing CPU and memory utilization for that specific model, and then moving down the stack into your Kubeflow metrics, right? So your Kubeflow is probably running in a Kubernetes cluster, running on a number of nodes and pods. You want to see how that model might be affecting the overall cluster that is probably servicing many other models within that environment. And then your actual Kubernetes cluster metrics there below that. Get into GPU monitoring, right? How much utilization are you getting out of those GPUs? As Taruna said earlier, you want to maximize your utilization, right? You're spending a lot of money on GPUs. You want to use that as much as possible. And then, continuing to move down the stack in the dashboard through network and storage. So I'm going to move over to the demo now and put on my glasses so I can see what we're talking about here. All right, perfect. So let me just refresh real quick, make sure we're good to go. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of AI workloads or applications are written in the cloud-native architecture, right? So I'm modeling that here through a unified observability dashboard, and we have an e-commerce system running, and it looks like we have some problems with availability. 10 of our subservices are up, but we've got 2 that are down. Our infrastructure resources look like they're still up and running, so no issues there. As I scroll down, I can see that one change in the environment has been detected. So maybe somebody made a change without going through the right change control processes. We want to know about that. Because we have an alert or an issue within the environment, we've automatically created a Jira ticket on the back end. So we can see that reflected here. And then we can see our ticket history for specific services within the environment that we may just want to take action on or check out. Now, if I come back up to the top, I can see my application response time. Doesn't look too horrible. It's hovering right around 5 milliseconds with a few spikes in there. But I can see I've got a couple services that are taking a second or longer to respond, right? So my grocery store and my shopper service here. I've got 6 open alerts with 2 correlated alerts. We'll come back to that here in a second. Then I can also see all of my alert history, the number of times that's happened, where I'm at right now as far as the alerts, and check that out. I've got a heat map here for the nodes within the environment. The darker the red, the more utilized that specific resource is. It could be CPU, memory, or your GPU for that matter. And if I come back up here, I can see my request count is pretty low right now, right? So we're at 2.9, and I should be spiking up a little bit higher. And my store request count is pretty low right now. So I can obviously see that my latency is an issue in the environment, right? So my store latency is up around 4 seconds. Obviously, that's horrible. And my latency issues is pretty active as well. So let's take a look at these correlated alerts. And so OpsRamp has 2 correlated alerts. This one looks like we have multiple related alerts occurring within 20 minutes of each other on Ubuntu 0.3. The first metric was e-commerce. It wants us to review the correlated alerts and recommended action in the activity log. So if I click on the activity log here, because we've seen these patterns before, OpsRamp is recommending that, based on our first response policy, they're recommending that we run the process called stop latency test, right? So we already know how we can solve this problem based on the ML seeing the patterns and making a recommendation on how we can solve that problem. But let's go figure out the why. We'll click on this other correlated alert as well. Here we'll click on the actual correlated alerts and look at the individual alerts. Here I have 3 different metrics or services, so grocery store requests, my inventory request count, my high visit store latency, and this one is actually a trace. So let's dive into the trace by clicking on the time range for that. We'll let this pop up, and we can see immediately at the top all of the latency. Each time this request is made, we can see where it ran fine, and then we now have another issue. We'll sort by duration, and we'll pick the longest one. So this one looks like about 4 seconds. We can click on it and then click View Details, and it's going to show me a waterfall view of that trace and then all of the spans that are contained within that trace, right? So all of the different API calls or service calls within that specific process are shown here. And we can see that our products and our inventory requests are taking about 2 seconds each in a web app or normally in any application, or the vast majority of applications, let's say. A 2-second response time is pretty bad. So let's go back over to the dashboard and let's take a look at the logs for this specific spike here. So I'll go back to the dashboard, click View Logs, and it'll drop me right into the log view. Now I already have a log view saved called Application Server Logs, and all I've done here is I've sorted by the host Ubuntu 03, and then looking for a line called Application Server within every log, and then that's what we're filtered on. I'm looking at the last 4 hours. Obviously, you can add any number of filters and save these however you would like if there's something that you need a shortcut to. Or, of course, you can browse all of those logs that were on the previous screen prior to the filter. So it looks like in our logs, our developers have left the application server latency test running, right? So most developers developing cloud-native applications want to try to break that application before it goes into production. Evidently, our developers, for some reason, forget to turn that test off, this specific test. So we've seen this pattern before. Now we know that we've created first response alert because they tend to be forgetful, so we can go and respond to that happening. So if I go back over to my log, or my correlated alert screen, I can again click back down on my activity log as this suggests. I can click Run Process, and we already have the stop latency test process in here. And we just give it some comments. We'll put in Ron Demo, click Run Process, and it's running, right? So it's going to go off and it's going to fix this problem automatically. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, is that autonomous IT operations? Well, no, because we did it manually for the demo, right? However, you can absolutely automate that entire process so that if a developer leaves a test running that you're familiar with, that they have had problems with in the past, you can create a ticket, alert somebody, email, page, whatever, and then automatically take action on that, or wait for approval to take action, however you would like to automate that. So complete autonomous IT operations there for our cloud-native applications. So let's refresh this. It takes a minute or two. We can already see the number of correlated alerts have gone down, our open alerts have gone down, and over the next minute or two, we'll see this continue to go down and fix itself. So that's the meat of the demo, right? We can see we now have 12 subservices up and running. Nothing is down. We're fully available. 0 open alerts and 0 correlated alerts. And we can see that our latency issues is back down to 0. We can see our number of requests starting to creep up for both inventory and our store services. So, it's all about observing patterns within the data, helping you understand how you can take action to solve those problems and get to a resolution much quicker. So as we come to a close here, you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I get this cool, great technology, right? So we have a number of solutions and packages that OpsRamp is available with. I mentioned PCAI earlier. OpsRamp obviously comes as a standalone solution if that's something you want, but we also bundle it with OpsRamp as part of our managed services offering. So if you want or are currently using HP managed services, they're using OpsRamp on the back end, give you access to all of these wonderful dashboards, and they'll build them for you and make that happen for you. Complete Care service, right? That's part of their IT Ops solution. There are 2 different versions that are packaged there. And then we're also included as part of the GreenLake Flex solutions. We're embedded with OpsRamp as part of Aruba Central, I think starting very soon. And that was announced back in September. We've got OpsRamp in Private Cloud AI, I mentioned that earlier, and then OpsRamp in Private Cloud Disconnected. So that was something that a number of our customers have been asking for many, many months, is OpsRamp running on premises in a vault in a completely disconnected environment. That's now a solution that we're offering our customers, part of what we call PCED. So there we go. So check us out. We're in the booth. I'll be there the rest of the day. A number of my folks are in there to answer any of your detailed questions. We've got the Big Wall demo at 3 o'clock. At 1:30. We've got our hands-on lab if you want to get your hands on the product and actually use it. It's a great walkthrough to get familiar with the product. And then please follow us on all of our socials. And yeah,